I think right now we are at an amazing time in history where we can redefine the future that we're living in like never before.
Welcome to the Public Figure Podcast, where we talk with visionary leaders from small businesses to global brands who are rewriting the future in this revolution of change.
What does AI got to do with it? AI and your life and where we're going. And what does it have to do with the Public Figure Society? Well, I had this real epiphany when I was looking at how much AI is making my life easier with making clips, doing my editing. I used to do translating, and now my translating professions are probably past in the way it used to be, translating from English to Norwegian, but life has really changed. And I don't think we realize how much is going to change, how our lives are going to be so much easier. But we're at the cusp of a new age. And if it had been Biden won, or if right now that we have Trump, society, institutions would be changing. They're changing in a different way than maybe many of us have anticipated, but it is changing. And what does this all have to do with you? And why am I so passionate about the Public Figure Society? Well, or being a public figure, is that AI is our invisible task force, workforce. They are the taskmasters of our lives. They are the calculator that is helping us compute much more easy. But we are the leaders. We are the head. And I do believe by not thinking of ourselves as we are going to be controlled by AI, I think we have a better chance of managing things. Some people are negative, but I like to take a positive stance on it, because I think right now we are at an amazing time in history where we can redefine the future that we're living in like never before. And a lot of that came from when I was reading this book, and I highly recommend it. It's called The Fourth Turning, is here. And there's a book before that, which Neil Howe did on defining that our society goes through the seasons of life within 80 years. And if we look at it that way, we are right now in winter and we're merging into spring. But I'm going to have a guest on, which is going to be really, really profound and exciting, because I really think he has really put the nail on the time that we are in. It's not just that we're ending an era of 80 years, institutions falling apart, and we're merging into something new. But right now, for the next 4 years, we'll define the next 80 years. Define the next era of the 80 that we're going into. And he likes to call it the Regenesis. His name is Jeremy Whaley. He's been on here before, and he's going to be coming on again to talk about his vision and his book about the Regenesis of life, how we, for the next 80 years, are defining it in the next 4 years. And I think it's an exciting time because it really takes me back to a quote by Alvin Toffler, who wrote the worldwide known book, Future Shock. He was a futurist, a businessman, and a writer. And he says, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but it will be those who cannot learn, relearn, unlearn. And I think it's really about unlearning right now. At least for us who are Gen X and millennials, it's really about how do we unlearn all the expectations in life that we have been through. And I think that's really for me. I was a press secretary, worked in communications in corporate. You had the corporate language. There had to be a certain formula. You had the press release. And somehow it's all changing. It's like now when you're writing a LinkedIn post, you don't have it in these beautiful paragraphs. You have it like in a way that you can read it. What I have found is basically writing newsletters as a thread with images, really changing the way language has been done. And how do we unlearn our lives? Unlearn to be open to relearn a whole new way of thinking. And it really took me back to when I wrote my book on the fame revolution. I was thinking it's a revolution of us to becoming known, but it's really not. It's a revolution of us putting ourselves. It's not just that we're all can become famous, become known, but AI is thrusting us up to being leaders of our lives. And what do I really mean by that? It's like when you have a whole team of taskmasters that can do things you don't have to do anymore, it gives you more time to lead. It gives you more time to be a strategist. And I think that's where we are right now, or I believe this is where we are right now, is that we are all being called to be public figures because we are having these people around us, invisible force around us, to actually uplift us to a different time. I mean, when I translated a book, that I did recently, like 4 years ago, it took months, right? You're going through it. You have some software, but not like what we have now with AI. Like, boom, it's like this. You just have to reread, reconfigure, and fix it. But a lot of the hard work is done. So we are in this time of unlearning what we have been doing through life. How do we unlearn the way? And I think it's interesting to see how the Generation Z is so much more leadership oriented in the way they are doing. They're questioning authority because they've really learned that they're not the taskmasters of life. They are the leaders of life. And it's really about us, older guard, who is now kind of defining society with the leadership that we're in. How do we unlearn to relearn a new life where we have AI as our taskmasters to help us? And it was interesting when we were talking to Michael Peterson, how much easier is it now that we can go to Gus, who is this chat GPT for the automobile repair, go there and get a second opinion. And then when we need to go more complicated, we can talk to an auto repair person that's been there for years, that understands the intricacies, things that don't necessarily fit a formula. Because we can't just stay within machine learning, because machine learning is very much black and white, doesn't always have those exceptions. And I think we as humans are exceptions and exceptional, right? So my whole idea with the Public Figure Podcast is to really help us understand that we are going into a new life, to unlearn that we have prescriptive language, unlearning this way of following the crowd, and relearning our authentic self. Who are we, and what do we stand for, and how do we position our creativity more so into society? So this is going to be a hard time for people that are so used to following the rules and following life, to unlearn, to relearn what's inside of them, and to foster out something greater and bigger of themselves. And that's really what the public figure society is. We're all becoming public figures. And you're asking yourself, well, why do you keep saying public figure? What is it about a public figure? Well, a public figure is more so than just an expert, more so than a thought leader. It encompasses everything. And having worked in Washington, D.C., working with politicians, having also worked in New York in the music industry, and also a little bit into the film industry of raising money for films, you're seeing that there's a way of doing things that the rest of us haven't really thought of or done. Like, so when you go into marketing and communications in a corporate setting, it's very much marketing, PR, and it's doing the task, following. And I think and I believe so, like with big companies like Purple, which was a strategy company that founded in 2008, took a lot of the components from politics and using the campaign style, using the public figure mindset to be quite successful, to be close to $1 billion, $100 million company. And why is that? It's because we're in it's a different mindset. It's a different way of doing marketing communications. It's really thinking about the product as a person and a product, that it has this personality component, it has a product component. And in that, you're not just about selling a product, you're not just about the core goal of what you want, but you're using things around you to lift it up. And so what do I mean by that? And I think the best way to really explain this is the 3 levels that you go into. First, you are an expert, right? You're a communications expert like myself, like you're an expert. I've got a master's degree from Columbia University. You have this amazing expertise of who you are, right? But then you want to stand out. So how do you stand out? Well, the way you stand out is you become a thought leader. And I always say, become the top 4% of your industry. You don't have to be the top 1%, but the top 4. Like, we all strive in college and high school to get an A, right? But an A is not in the 1%. It's in the top 4%. So you just need to become an A-lister in your profession. And how do you become an A-lister? Well, you start writing opinion pieces. You start sharing your opinion and where you think that industry is going. You're branching out. And I've helped a lot of clients of mine, CEOs and so forth, to become thought leaders in their industry. So they're sharing their information and associations, and they're really bringing themselves forward in that component, right? And so that's fine. And that's a thought leader. So you might write a book, you might be speaking. But what's a public figure? Well, up until just a few years back, you could be a thought leader without really sharing about your life. But right now, you're seeing of these amazing people out there that are that are psychologists, that are PhDs, that are singing and dancing and putting entertainment components into it. And it's branching themselves out of the straight line of their expertise, because expert and thought leader is a growth pattern of maximizing what your knowledge is. But to branch out from thought leader to public figure is where you use all of yourself into what you're doing. And that's what we're expecting more and more of people. And not just people. We're also expecting that from companies. And I think that's really set the standard was Jim Stengel in his book Grow. He was a Procter & Gamble in the 90s, CMO, legend on turning around the company. And what his book Grow does, and I think it's a great book to read, is, and I'll put it in the show notes because even today, even though it's a classic, it's really a classic, going back to purpose. And so why would a company have purpose, right? But a company does have a purpose. It's started by a founder. A founder had a passion and a purpose to start it, right? There's a soul in the company as much as there's a soul in a person. I don't mean a literal soul where it's like a person, but it does have that component. And what he discovered when he revitalized Max Factor, where it went back to its essence and founding days of being more Hollywoodish, totally refurbished it and made it grow. The same with Pampers, going back to its original reason of founding. And I found that myself when I was working in the oil and gas company. We had this company that was called AGR. And I asked the CEO, so what does it really mean? Always great results, Torund. And I come to find out when we were going through this rebranding and messaging, I was interviewing some of the founders, the founding staff, and the one woman laughed and she goes, doesn't mean that. It means Alve, Geir, and Reda, 3 guys, blue collars that started the company. But as they grew, they were, they wanted to be something they weren't, is my interpretation of it. They wanted to be more white collar, cool, and they were bringing in engineers because what made them known was they were cleaning rigs, right? And they were going, and they bought like 15 companies. It became like a multi-million-dollar initiative, one of the world's largest oil and gas services company. And so in that, when we found out that the company was really founded by these 3 blue collar that had this really down to earth vision, mission of who they were. And we went back to it. The company flourished when we did the rebranding, right? Pioneering achievements. They were pioneers in what they were doing. They were doing a whole new method, and that just gravitated. And that's kind of what Jim Stengel talks about, going back. And so what does this all have to do with AI, public figure, and so forth? Is that your purpose and your why is important. And we get kind of tired of, I kind of got tired of for a while, like, what's your why, right? Why put so much pressure on you? But it's really what the purpose of what you're doing. Maybe that's an easier way. For me, that was an easier word. But it's really about going to the brass tacks of what it is, your essence is, what you're going to do. But what this all means is that people want to have more personality. We don't want the prescriptive language of the press release being really stiff and just talking like that's what a thought leader can do. They can just talk within their topic and they can stay there. Even still today, you can. But the people that are really going to flourish in this society that's right now is to put your personal stamp on what you're doing, your fingerprint on what you're doing. Yes, your fingerprint. And what we're seeing now is AI is lifting all of us to be public figures. And public figure is kind of like a politician or a movie star. I like public figure because it's not taking the tarnishments of fame or, politics. We think of them as very corrupt. But public figure is really those components of what a movie star and a politician has, of becoming known, of having visibility, but also having credibility. And I think fame was missing that. You could be infamous, right? And so there's a sense of influence, credibility, and visibility. And in that, what does a public figure really do? A public figure is more than what their expertise is. It's more than their groundbreaking ideas on a certain point. They bring themselves to the table. Yes, they bring themselves, which is hard. I remember the whole thing, the reason why I wrote the book was, the quote was, I don't want to be a movie star. I want to go back to sitting on my desk and having someone send out press releases, right? That's what CEOs used to do. And we can't go back to that. That's what's so interesting. We have to unlearn our lives and to relearn the new life. And the new life is, you are a public figure. And understanding that you are really going to reconsider leaving the expert field. You could either go thought leader and go totally into the 4%. You don't really have to. You can skip over to being a public figure, which is really bringing yourself, your personality into what it is you want to share. So it's a really fascinating time right now, because we are in a moment which I don't think has ever really happened in history. And I've read a lot of various moments and times where we had moments where we could really share. And I think the one that really fascinated me was Kodak. When Kodak was founded, the little brownie camera was really Instagram, Facebook before, social media before there was a social media. It's a really fascinating story. So the brownie, so what do I mean by the brownie? I think this is really interesting, because I think this is where we are going back to history. Because I always like to go back to history. What has really done before? Well, the brownie was invented in 1888. I'm reading from my book here. I don't always remember the dates, and I want to make sure I have it correctly. And it was the smartphone before smartphones, and social media before social media, and it revolutionized personal photography. And it was the first time people really got the sense of being a public figure, really sensing their creativity mattered, that there was no rules, no gatekeepers to stop it. And so what happened was, before the brownie was invented by Kodak, it was photography was confined by professionals and wealthy enthusiasts with specialized skills. And then the camera was offered for $1 in 1900. There was no need for a license, right? Licenses takes away the capability of us to really flourish, right? So the license was gone to be a good photographer. And the brownie, with its simplicity and affordability, democratized photography. And so by democratizing it, it democratized creativity in all of us. And I believe all of us have this yearning and desire to be that creative person. And so a sign of significant influence of Kodak, which we don't know now today, but, in the American lexicon, they had Kodaking, Kodakers, Kodakery, and it created new communities, new forms of expression. With the expansion of these groups, scope of photography grew beyond possibility of being restricted by governmental regulations, right? And so it was a groundbreaking time, and that's where we are right now. We are in the Kodak moment of today, the brownie moment today. We are flourishing in all that we're doing. And so, unfortunately, history had it so that when new inventions came in, like movies, TVs, and radio, government confined access and took away a lot of that leadership role of being a public figure of our lives. And so we're at this amazing time right now that we can define and redefine our future. And we're in the brownie moment, the Kodak brownie moment, for looking into history, where we have leadership of our lives. We can use our creativity more. It's not just being someone that does work for someone else. And it's a fun time. It's a hard time. Relearning isn't always easy. Unlearning isn't always easy. You're used to, used to following the rules, following ways of doing things, prescriptive press releases. Wait, can I really do that? And I love when I've had Gen Zers work for me to really showcase to me how powerful it is to have that internal, I do it this way, question authority. Sometimes it gets annoying when you're a Gen Xer myself, like, wait, I couldn't do that when I was young. But I really go back to my book when Torund Bryhn, who's an author, 10 times author on diversity and inclusion, was basically saying that, yes, we didn't have the power that the young people have today because we had privacy. But the trade-off is right now that you have all of this moment in time where you can be a voice and your voice has a ripple effect. And I'm going to close with this right now, which I really thought was very powerful, is Van Jones, who's a CNN TV host. I really love listening to him. And he was saying, the mainstream media has become the fringe, assessing that there are no gatekeepers right now, that we are completely in a moment in time, in the Kodak Brownie moment, as I like to say, where we can actually define our future, redefine how we want to live. And it's a very exciting time. But I do want to say one thing, because some people have told me, like, well, so what is a public figure as opposed to an influencer, right? And I think Joe Piazzi, who wrote the book Celebrity Inc., said it best. It's that it's a commodity. You are being paid to give of yourself. So there's a direct transaction, right? You are maybe promoting your cell phone, you're promoting something, and you're getting money for it. You're an affiliate marketer. That's an influencer. A public figure person does not go and asks for money. It gives of themselves personally in a way to share with the world and is more altruistic. Now, will the definitions change? Of course, there's always life changes, words change, moments change. So this is my take on it right now. But I think it's a very, very exciting time to be alive. And I do recommend that you start to learn more, but also be mindful of unlearning and relearning in this age. And that AI is our taskmaster. AI is our invisible workforce that's lifting us up to be a public figure, lifting us up to be the strategists, the conductors of our lives. It's a great, great time to be alive. And I know some of you guys are afraid, but embrace this time, because we can redefine the future. AI doesn't have to redefine it. We can redefine it and be the leaders of it and be the public figure. And I'll talk more about what it means to be a public figure, because there's a greater responsibility in our lives. Like it says in the Bible, a leader has 10 times more responsibility. And so it is in the sense that we are becoming more responsible for our lives. We are more responsible for the words that we say. And in that, we're going to be exploring that, but also exploring what it means with all the new AI tools like we did with Michael Peterson. And we're going to continually bringing in that, but not just that, but also bring in, how are people coping with this time? How are we thriving in a time where it's a revolution of change? We don't know where we're going. And right now, as I like to call it, we are in the Regenesis age, which is what Jeremy Whaley is going to be coming out a book with, is that the next 4 years defines the next 80 years. So that is it for this podcast. I would love to hear from you. And if you have any key speakers or you want to come on yourself, please send me a DM, because I would love to explore this wonderful time that we're in right now, and embrace it and take it upon our role that we redefine the future. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Public Figure Podcast. Stay ahead and keep rewriting the future.